Okay, so I am cutting snippets from Studioe for the Snippets Pearlescent free pattern, and I'm demoing how to cut this fabric. So the first cut you need to do is width across the fabric. You need a 6.5 inch strip. So just line her up. And this will give you the whole range of the ombre stripe. So we've got it all the way. And then you trim it to 42.5, which I just have the piece folded. Use the 21.25 mark because it's folded, and just cut off the end. So that's the first strip. Alright. Now we open this, we are left with so we have 25 inches left, and we have the gradient from dark to light to dark. So to make it easier to cut, I just fold it in half lengthwise, because all of our cuts now will come from the length of fabric. Okay, so from the first end of the darkest color, cut off the selvage. And we cut 1.5 inch strip, because we're going to do strip piecing later in the pattern. You need to cut a 3 inch and a 2 3/8 inch strip from the darkest. So on this side I will cut the 2 3/8. From the darkest. Then we're going to flip it over to get more dark to cut the 3 inch. Okay. From the 3 inch strip, we need to cut 8 3 inch squares. From the 2 3/8 we need 6 squares, and then we're going to cut those across the diagonal. And then you just cut them across one diagonal to make triangles. Now the next section gets cut from the medium fabrics, and then we have the lights. So for the lights, you need to cut 3 2 1/8. And you need to cut a 3 inch strip, and you need to cut a 2 1/8 inch strip. So you need 12 inches of light, and then you can cut your medium. So I find it easier to take a ruler, have my center line there, and I align that 6 inches and that 6 inches. So there's the 12 inches I need for light. So I do that first. So now I know this is my lights. I didn't cut those pieces in a minute. But now I can go back into here and I can cut my mediums knowing this is all my extra fabric. So for medium, we need just one 3-inch strip. So I think I like the middle, so I'm just gonna go right in the middle here. We're cutting 8 squares from this. There's my mediums. Now let's go back to the light section. From the light section, we need to cut 3 2 1/8 from the lightest part, 1 2 1/8 from the medium light, and 1 3-inch from the medium light. So we're going to cut 3 inches on this side. My 3 2 1/8 for the lightest part. Two. 3, and then I have to cut one more 2 1/8. From the 3 lightest, we are subcutting 12 4 and 7/8. So every cut gives me 6, so I need 2 cuts. One. There's the 12. Then I need 12 2 1/8 inch squares, so I'm going to cut 6 of them from here. And 6 from this strip. So 2 4 6. And then for my last strip, we're going to get the 8 light 3-inch squares. So, those are my lights, mediums, darks, and then the 6-inch strip. So that's how you cut fabrics A, B, and C from this Snippets quilt pattern. Okay, so step 1 of the Snippets block is we're going to make this snail trail block. So first you cut a 1.5 by length of fabric strip from the dark sections, which I've now sewn together. So this is fabrics C and G, or C and G. And now we need to cut it into 12 1.5 inch segments. So what I like to do is I take a square ruler and I take these grip strips that we sell that are long, and I cut them into segments. So here they are. And I take one of these and I put it on the back of my ruler at the 1.5 inch mark. So now I have a bumper that will stop my fabric. So when I go to cut these, oops, gotta put it in the right spot. 1.5, which is right here. You don't need the bumper to be the same length as your segment. You just need enough to catch it. So if I was cutting 6 inches, I'd put it in the middle. Right now we're cutting 1.5, so this is great up here. So then what I do is I align the center line and I use the bumper to stop the fabric from moving. And I cut. And we need to cut 12 of these. So you know you're in the right spot every time because the edge of the fabric hits the bumper. And then when you're done, you can peel the bumper off and just stick it to the front of your ruler. It'll re-stick several times, so you can use it over and over and over. And these are called grip strips. They were meant to put on the back of your ruler and keep your ruler from sliding. But I find this a much more useful way to use this tool. So I got 6. So I'm going to cut 12 of them. Okay, so this is what the grip strips look like before we cut them into segments. Again, they use them to keep your ruler from sliding, but I like to buy them and then cut them into 2.5-inch segments. And then I just keep them around the studio like this, and I add them to my rulers as I have to cut things. So now we have all 12 of those cut. So the next step is to take these 2 units and sew them together to create a 4-patch. Then once we have the 4-patch sewn, we're going to sew, we're going to have it like this, and we're going to sew our 2 3/8 triangles on either side of the 4-patch to create this unit. Alright, so let's square these guys up on our Martelli turntable. They're going to be 3 1/4, so I find the center line. I use the 45 along the seam in here in the middle, and I make sure I'm outside the 3 1/4 section. So to do the other 2 sides, I use the 3 1/4 measurement on the ruler and take care of those 2 sides. There we go. 3 more. Okay, so next step, we've got our centers done. Now we have to create our side borders. And to do that, we're going to do a flip and sew on the rectangle with this square. So I believe this is a 2 1/8 inch square rectangle, 2 1/8 inch square going on top of a 2 1/8 by 3 1/4 inch rectangle. And you would put it on here. In the traditional way is just draw a line from point to point, sew on it, and flip it open. I have found it's much more accurate to take a ruler like this. It's a 45° with a 1/4 inch edge on it, right there. This one happens to be my favorite because I can do a lot of different things with it, but you can also use these little folded corner clippers, and you just lay it on the square, and you align the top of the square, the side of the square, and then you draw a line. And this line is where your 1/4 inch guide goes on. So you're still sewing it from point to point, but you're using your 1/4 inch guide on this line. And what that does is it gives you a much more accurate measurement, because instead of just going point to point, where you're only aligning these 2 points, you're actually using the ruler and you're aligning 2 edges of the square. Sometimes you can even use the 3rd line down here. So that diagonal is much more accurate than this diagonal. So once you've marked them all, you layer them up, and you always want to take the smaller triangle and point it towards the square that you want it to flip out to. So we want it to flip this way. So this is the smaller triangle, it's going to go that way. If we did this and sewed, it would not come out right. So it'll go in my machine like this, the 1/4 inch foot will go on my line, and I will sew on that line. So now we just need to do that for all of these, and then we'll come back and show you the side borders. Okay, so we have these units all sewn, and now what we need to do is take one of these and sew this to one side and this to the other. So that'll be the next step, is to sew all of these to these. Okay, so now we have these sewn. So I use my 1/4 inch foot guide on the line, and I sewed from end to end, and then these are going to flip out like that. Correctly. That one I messed up, so we're going to fix that one, but this one is good. So we now have to cut that angle off. So again, I gang them up. And I take a ruler and I align the 1/4 inch line on my sew line, and the edge of the ruler should end up on the drawn line, and I just cut away the waste. And now we're ready to press these all open. So I will repeat that with all of those. And here we go. These are all done. They should measure 6½ inches square, and these are our snail trail blocks for the Snippets quilt. You should have 6 of each color. Okay, for the next step, we're going to create one square on one corner and do flip and sew like we've been doing all along. So that'll go in there, and these will flip open, and then you're going to sew 4 together to make a block. So to do that, we need to take all of the 3 inch squares that are dark and pair them up with all of the smaller black squares that are dark, medium to medium and light to light. So we've laid all these out so I know what goes where. There's 56 of these, 56 of these. So then we go through and we start marking each of these. And then we align the smaller triangle towards the outer corner. So don't do this, smaller triangle to the outer corner. We align those up, and we're going to sew from point to point, and our 1/4 inch guide will go on the drawn line. So all of these need to get matched up. So I'll do that next. Okay, so now we have all of these done with their little triangles on the corner. So now we're going to sew them all together to create one block. So we end up with 6 from each color, 2, 2, and 2. So we're going to sew all those together and come back. Okay, so here are the last of the blocks in 3 gradations. So we got the blue, the orange, they're so pretty, purple, lime, tealy mint, I guess you would call it, raspberry, and the gold. So now we have all our blocks and units put together. So I'm going to follow the quilt photo, and I'm going to sew these into columns, add that little border, and then do the piece border, and we'll be done.